Hey everybody, welcome back to the Quest for the Bestest. It's the podcast for Backlot Paper where we review every single Palme d'Or winner. Today, the random spin wheel gave us a movie, 1995. That would be, a ways in the past. Directed by Emir Kusturica. That is, this is the film Underground. It's a Yugoslavian, Serbian movie. About World War II. We just got to work through every nation's trauma about World War II on this show. And and that is the main goal of the episode today. We're going to talk about Underground. We're going to have a good time. This is quite a movie.
Yes, it is.
There's a comparison here that I'm going to make, and you guys will probably find it very obvious.
A little bit of sizzle. Okay.
It's a movie we talked about on this show in this series. Okay. But before we do that,
is it the movie that we talked about last week?
No, but the movie that we did talk about last week is Ruben Östlund's Triangle of Sadness. You might have saw it. Came a couple years ago. We thought about it again. We reviewed it again, and we gave it another score. 5.8 is where it went on the numerical scale, and on the list, that would be spot number 36. So yeah, there you have it. There's 45 films
it's kind
on
of
the
a
list.
womp scenario.
Yeah, it's kind of womp womp. But today, Underground gets to be the 46th movie added to the list totally. Maybe it'll go at the bottom slot. Maybe it'll go at the top slot. We got to talk about it and decide.
Mayhaps.
Before we do that, though, let's continue this rambly intro. And Abram, do you have any thoughts from our commenters that you'd like to share with us?
I do, and it actually comes from an episode of our show, probably from the movie you were going to put in conversation, actually, with Underground, and that is The Accountant 2.
Yes,
Laura
that's
Batty,
right.
1767, says, watched it. I thought it was very entertaining and funny. I agree that Ben Affleck's voice changed in an odd way, but on the plus side, I think he generously gave all the funniest lines to his co-star. Now, I wouldn't know because I haven't seen it yet. We're just talking about this. I'm waiting for the $4.99 VOD rental.
Right.
Folks, we're looking real thin on comments here, so I had to go to the review of The Accountant 2. Didn't quite make the cut for the Palme d'Or. Probably never will. Probably will never get recognized, sadly.
It missed the window. I mean, the festival just started up this year. If only it had like a summer release and they could have submitted it. I don't know.
Of course. Luckily, I'm sure a lot of people are going to have a lot of things to say about the Underground. And they leave lots of good comments for us, right?
Yeah, they better.
Right.
They better, or we're gonna get real mad.
That's right.
Oh, why I oughta.
You're gonna get a finger wag.
Okay.
You better watch yourself.
Tanner, as I look here at the desert of comments on the old channel, because I was just curious, there's none worth reading out. Tanner, would you tell us what this movie is about? What happens in this Underground movie? Do we go underground in this movie even?
Oh, we do. We do,
we.
Tima. But where we start is, of course, a small village in Yugoslavia in the year 1944. We meet a couple of pals by the name of Marco and Peter. Marco and Peter have, in the throes of the war, have joined the Communist Party and are sort of acting as, if I may, underground tradesmen, or they're basically operating a black market in their area, buying and selling food and various goods and niceties and things for the people of Yugoslavia. Nice. But then a bombing raid comes over, their entire village is leveled, and some other things occur where, Peter is very infatuated with an actress, and so he kidnaps her, and they try to get married on a boat, but then some Nazis come through and steal the actress girlfriend back from them, and then they have to go into hiding, and they're captured. And the big thing is here that at a certain point, Peter and a bunch of other refugees from the war basically start an underground colony and are trapped there for let's check the watch here, 20 years they're trapped in this underground colony. And Marco is living above them, letting them live in this illusion that it's, the World War II is basically continuing on in the world around them after the Soviet Union basically absorbs the country of Yugoslavia. And then they get out and there's further fighting and war never ends and et cetera, et cetera. And then it's the 90s. And, you know, this film traverses quite a period of time. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of movie to cover. It's basically 3 hours. It's nearly 3 hours long.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It is nearly 3 hours long. Tucker, you, well, I don't know. We got 2 3-hour movie enjoyers sitting diagonally from each other, Tucker and Abram. I'll give it to Tucker first. What did you think of Underground as a whole?
Yeah, the crazy part about Underground is that when you read the description that is available on Letterboxd, and you're looking around at basic information about this movie, a film that is about the impact of war on people and them having to hide from those effects, and the ideas of war never changes, and that it impacts these cultures and destroys them. Sounds like a lot of the stuff that we have talked about on this show and also on our Best Picture review, of course, from numerous different cultural perspectives, as we have like a lot of Europe contributing war-themed movies to the Palme d'Or winners. But there's not a single other one of them that's like Underground. I mean,
No.
the crazy part about Underground is that the directors that I would most compare this movie style to are Jean-Pierre Jeunet, who made Delicatessen and Amélie, and Terry Gilliam, who made Brazil and a lot of these other wacko sicko movies. And this is a wacko sicko movie. This movie is weird. It stars a pair of characters who are brash and annoying and strange. It has a relatively high concept premise that I think plays out in interesting ways. I think on an emotional level, I don't think the movie like really, really grabbed me because it's more focused on its comedic angle of things. So I don't think the characters end up getting don't end up getting too deep. But as someone who likes when a movie attempts like just something off the wall, this movie delivers that in spades. And so I had a really great time just constantly being surprised by where it goes, what it ends up what the characters end up doing, how they end up feeling about each other. I'm excited to get into it in the quest way of analyzing it from a thematic level, but just as an entertaining film, I was totally surprised by Underground because I didn't know there was a movie like this in the Palme d'Or winning lineup.
Yes.
Yeah, there you have it. Abram, what did you think?
I started watching it. I'm thinking, God damn, I'm watching Babylon. This is so incredible. This is I have so many intriguing thoughts about Underground, but I think my prevailing thought when I finished the film was like, I don't really know what I just saw on a basic plot level, and it's exciting when I encounter films sort of in this spirit where I find myself confused and then I want to go learn more.
Mm-hmm.
And I found myself reading a lot of perspectives on the film, both more contemporary but also sort of of the time of release. Yeah. But then also just trying to learn from a very, very high level any sort of brief history of Yugoslavia, which I did not have, which was something that would have been critical. And I think in my reading after the film, I was able to stitch together what the hell is going on. And I think ultimately this film feels very much out of time. And I think that that's extremely interesting. My comparison to Babylon really... it rings true for me. This sort of maximalism I found very exciting.
Which, by the way, from your perspective, is not an insult. You're a big fan of Babylon.
I love Babylon, yeah, because I'm not a coward.
You have a lion's heart.
I do. And so I'm really taken by like the maximalist tendencies of Underground, even though I think it does drag a little bit. To me, the last hour and 15-20 of this film is outstanding. And now that I feel like I have a little bit more of a grasp on what the movie's actually about, I'm really a little unsure on where I come down on the actual purpose of the film. But I think it's extremely intriguing and viscerally exciting. And so I think on the whole, I had a great time with the film. And whenever a movie sort of inspires me to want to go learn about its historical context that it is narrativizing is sort of a sign that the film is working for me on some level or another.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Tanner, your thoughts?
I love this movie. I think this is an astounding work here. I was similarly to you gentlemen completely taken aback by the immediate tonal attitude of this movie, and really how it advances from there, and really how off the wall it gets, how surrealist it can get, how maximalist it can get, to use Abrams' word as well. And I also found it pretty stunning and beautiful, especially as we begin wrapping up and really sort of examining our love triangle and everything like that, but also the national perspective of this movie, and really what it's saying about war and the effect on people, and coming from this very specific area in this specific time. It feels very specific. You're right, Abram, but the resounding message and attitude and feelings about this time and this people, I believe, transcend the specifics of the era and of the setting, to be supremely moving to me. I think this is perhaps one of the finer films that we've covered in this series. If I can show my hand a little bit for the end of the episode, I have plenty of notes, plenty of thoughts, a lot of things that I just wrote down because I'm like, I want to remember to bring that up because it is an incredible film watching experience, maybe above all else.
Well, I would by and large agree with all of you guys. I found it to be very funny, and the comparison that I'm thinking about is both in like a visual but also kind of thematic, and that's the tin drum. And this one is like tin drum.
Yes, I can see that for
this
sure.
Is pretty similar to the tin drum, but it's not as like off-putting. The tin drum has this very strange kind of odorous quality to it that is a little like not great. And this one is the same level of like churlishness and focusing
That's
on
a big boy word right there.
Yeah.
I said that because I don't know what it means.
Churlish, well, it's just kind of humorous, making fun of the situation that it's around, like lack
Its
of
body.
Yeah. And I really enjoy the way our two main
Thank
characters
you for putting it in layman's terms.
are yes. I love these two main guys. This love triangle relationship is very interesting. I find myself a bit more confused by the second half of the film than the first. The first half is more straightforward, and during World War II, and I think that there is a lot to be said that like we get into the Cold War now, like things are really confusing. We don't know what's what. We don't know what's going on. We don't know if the outside is the real world or the underground is the real world. And so I think there's a lot to chew on, and I think there's a lot of parts of the film that are really beautiful, and including some parts where you go, how did they do that? And anytime, how did they do that? I think about some of the final scene of the film. This is like, how? Oh yeah. How did they do that?
Yeah.
And that's a great thing to ask on any film, is when you're watching it and it just defies explanation.
Perplexes you.
Yeah. And so this one I just had a great time with watching. It was very fun. I did feel the dragging in the middle hour or so, but the ending had some spice to it, and I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say, because I think my thoughts and impressions are actually a bit more front weighted on this film than on the back half. I got more to chew on from the beginning than the end. But who knows? You might inspire me to come up with some new thinking.
We seek to inspire one another on this show.
True.
Doing that.
Tucker, what topic area should we start with? Do you have a question that you want to hear answered from all of us?
Any sage wisdoms that you want to mine out?
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk about the surreal aspects of this movie.
Yeah.
The concept, the core concept, I think sets this movie apart, other than it having a comedic tone and that being a relatively unique perspective to take to a film about war, is that there is this underground society that they've established, and we have Marco as kind of ostensibly their overlord, who is tricking them into thinking that the war is still going and manipulating time so that they think time is happening slower than it actually is, which is really crazy. And all of this stuff is odd, but it's not surreal. Then there's the extra layer where we find out there's this like literally underground highway that connects to different countries, and on like a ridiculous level seems to be like, you travel faster when you're in this underground than
it's the nether in Europe.
Yeah, exactly. 8 blocks in the underground. 8 blocks in the overworld is 1 block in the underground, whatever. That's so funny. I wonder if that was an inspiration.
Maybe.
But that is something I'm not quite sure where the movie draws its line in terms of what is real and what isn't. I think it's really conceptually interesting and sort of creates this film's own sense of world building. But what do you guys think of this dynamic of having a world that is based in our history and World War II and the Cold War and these real conflicts between cultures and nations, but then also having this extra layer of unreality to it that I think gives this film a very unique texture, but to someone who is not particularly attuned to that, I think might be like, what? Why is this even a part of it?
I think my first thought on that is it relates to what is my favorite element of this film, and that is that Paul has a band that follows him around everywhere. And we open the movie with this... What do you mean? Blackie, yeah.
Peter.
Peter.
Blackie,
we gotta call him Blackie, because no one calls him Peter. It's like, who the fuck is Peter?
They call it... Yeah. That band, which starts us right off and is playing great music. I really like... accompanies us throughout the whole movie. Seemingly just there, seemingly just hanging out, playing music. He's in command of them. He orders them to play louder, stop, do whatever. That, for me, sets the tone of a element of surrealism, of where we just have these very exaggerated characters who have a very exaggerated presence in the world that they exist in. And so I don't exactly know how that contributes to this underground highway, because I don't really know how that factors into the film as a whole. It's very out there and confusing to me. But this film itself does set up a very unrealistic setting that we live in, and it allows us to have a lot of comedic moments, like in the theater. And so that is kind of where I come to seeing the surrealism of the film, is with this band, and this the situations that we find ourselves in are also preposterous, like at least for during the wartime, with the marriage, with the theater, with the boat. Like, it's all ridiculous and funny, but yeah, not particularly attuned to reflecting the real world.
The film was originally called what? It was called Underground, Once Upon a Underground Movie. Hold on. This is important.
Once upon a time, there was a country.
Well, sure.
That was the name of the movie?
The original title of it. Once upon a time, there was a country.
Interesting.
And I think that's important because to me, part of the interest of the ending is that it sort of elaborates on this idea of fairy tale. And this idea of this story that never ends. And so I think I look at a lot of the heightened elements, the surreal elements of this film, and I look to the original title and look to the end of the film as clues that the film is not necessarily operating in the mode of war drama. I think in some ways I sort of read this movie as the inverse. It's like, what if the war drama came into the realm of the fairy tale? And I think that kind of frames my viewing of the film, because it very quickly loses any illusion of sort of being in the stylistic or thematic mode of a lot of the other war films we discuss. I mean, even just the idea that this character we follow of Ivan and Sonny, his ape from the zoo. The bombing of the zoo immediately gives this, I think, a very fairy tale like quality. These animal companions we have, elephants in the street during the bombing. Everything is a little bit askew, and I think that speaks to the mode of storytelling we're in. And I don't think it is the war drama for any of the film, actually.
Sure.
Yeah, I think though that this film still can tap into the the grand human tragedies of war, especially around the time that we're getting into the 60s and the 90s set sections of this film. I mean, Marco becomes like an arms dealer. I guess so does Blackie at that point. That they like fall back into these systems of war, the underground systems of war, the underground rules that are demanded of countries at war, and the machines that continue to pump out guns and continue to manage soldiers and mobilize soldiers and things like that. At the same time, yeah, I mean, I think Kurtzika understands the absurdity that can sometimes come out of these things, and really uses that as the driving force for the mood of the film. I mean, at times it is like downright Looney Tunes. It is downright like, I think particularly of the scene where Blackie's being sort of smuggled out of the Nazi like torture camp. Torture facility in a suitcase.
Yeah, but immediately prior, the dude decides to this is like absolutely hilarious to me. The guy's like, it doesn't work. The zapping torture device doesn't work. Let me do it.
Why doesn't it work?
He's an electrician.
He's an electrician. Of
He's
course,
got that juice in his veins.
It's like it's a childlike understanding of the world almost.
Yeah.
Well, this electrician would be impervious to electricity because he's around it all the time. And to the Looney Tunes point I was going to make, a grenade blows up like on his chest in the suitcase, and he's like fine. Like his hair is just blown back in a comedic fashion, which then leads directly into him being needed to heal up in the basement or whatever, and then they're just trapped down there for 20 years. Though they think it's a very manageable 15 years, so I suppose it's fine. But no, yeah, I mean, the tightrope act of it's not even really a tightrope act, because I think it doesn't really balance these things. I think it is the absurdity, the magical realism of the world, and then occasionally Kurtzika will come in with an absolute haymaker wallop of like grand tragedy and beauty at certain points in the film as well.
The only other note on that, in terms of genre, in terms of style of storytelling, theater is very important to the narrative, and I think viewing this as a 3-act play is also
theater,
important and intentional.
Then film, and then and then yet another thing, or is it just maybe theater and film? Or how Abram, do you break it up with this theatrical theme and 3 acts?
Wait, in terms of
continue your point. That's what I just continue.
Okay,
your
I'm
point.
getting our ideas crossed. Yeah. No, I mean the film very intentionally draws. It's concerned with theatricality, and it's very literary. We have characters who are performers. We have characters who are poets. We're concerned with the truth of the word on a page, right? And we also very clearly call attention to 3 disparate acts with these intertitles.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think that is important also for viewing this as in some way Shakespearean, right? Whether you're viewing it as a tragedy or more aptly probably a comedy or a farce. I think that those are literary modes that are being channeled here.
Yeah, it is a war farce in a lot of ways, and the war is present in all 3 acts of the movie, even though the people underground are led to believe that World War II is still happening. But that middle section is set in 1961 or 64 or something like that, after 20 years or something, wherein the Cold War is in full swing. But they're led to believe that it is still active fighting going on in their country, and not the authoritarian government under Tito who they still view as a hero. He is still like the underground rebellion leader that they look up to and worship and are taking directives from, and not
sing songs about.
Exactly, and not the dictator that is controlling the country, and then in a trickle-down sort of way, or in a more small mirrored way, Marco is their dictator. He is their Tito, the one who is keeping them, controlled and in farming their labor and things like that.
So a little logistical point of order. Does the film explain why they end up staying down there? It just is that because in my understanding, I don't really know why they're down there, other than the war continued according to them, and they needed to stay down there. I'm
especially concerned with this.
Yeah.
If you really want to go there, I think it's explained that, at least for Blackie, he's really the only important character down there truly. that he is led to believe that if he goes out, that he will be like immediately scooped up by Nazi soldiers because he is like this high value political target who escaped this, the prison or whatever. And that he is a key figure in Tito's plan to defeat the Nazis, and so he has to remain in hiding until the exact correct moment.
Yeah.
Well, this is also where I think my reading comes in, because this was one of the main things I didn't understand when I watched.
Yeah.
But essentially, the film is also following. Let's be clear, folks. I read pieces titled "A Brief History of Yugoslavia," right? So don't take me as an expert.
Here we go.
But the Axis powers invade Yugoslavia, and then Tito, at that point, as a revolutionary fighter, liberates Yugoslavia from Axis leadership, and then he rules over Yugoslavia until he dies, and then shortly after there are the various cries of independence, which cause massive civil wars, and the
balkanization of the Balkans.
Yes, and the film is situating most of the characters in the mindset that they are still waiting for Tito to strike back against the Axis governance, and so what they are doing is they are manufacturing weapons for a resistance fight they think is ongoing, but in reality, Marco is profiting from that.
Yes, he's a war profiteer,
right? Because we keep seeing him through his little periscope as he's watching them make more and more guns, and they make a tank, and he's selling all that shit, and he's going back down and saying, "Hey Tito, he really wants you out in the big final battle. Here's a little watch he gave you, right?" But that's not true at all. In fact, Marco is sort of propagating this lie that actually Blackie is dead. He's holding a monument for him. But I also think that this is not very clear in the narrative, which I think is part of why I was kind of disengaged in the middle portion of the film. I felt like everything was really moving quite quick. And in reality, when you zoom out, it's a simple idea. Right-hand man of Tito, Marco, is lying to all the people in the underground. But I don't quite know why. I didn't really pick that up when I was watching.
Yeah, I don't.
Did you feel similar, Timo?
It's like what's the character note of Marco's that leads him to act in this way? Because Blackie's character note is pretty understandable to me. He's brash. He kind of loves danger. He's a good time to him is shooting his gun a lot. And he does that when he's celebrating, and he does it when he's killing, and he's got a big giant smile during both of those.
He hates those fascist motherfuckers.
Fucking fascist motherfuckers. Which is, good thing to be muttering under your breath. So Marco, his character note is much more of this like maybe vanguardist, maybe like planner, party man. I mean, the character path that he goes on is ending up in the party apparatus, and then rising up, and we get some nice Forrest Gump editing in here, some prime 90s. It's like it works for me. It works for me. It's fine.
Yeah. Hey, if I may, I think it looks better than when it happens in Forrest Gump.
Well, and then you're
more limited than Forrest Gump.
Yeah, and then like Brezhnev walks by, and you're like, holy shit, it's Brezhnev! Like, look at those caterpillars on his forehead.
I was saying that in my living room.
Timo.
So why, other than that he's just kind of used to living this good life, making a lot of money, why Marco does this is a little unclear to me. But I think the effect of it is quite potent, right? So I don't think knowing why he does it is critically important. I think it's good info, but it's not critically important to the point that Kusturica is getting here about war and culture and what that does to your country.
Yeah, I mean, and that is when I realized that I didn't understand frankly what was going on in terms of him climbing the ranks and how he did that and why he did that and why he was lying to the guy who's presumably his best friend and all this stuff. This comes about the halfway point of the movie, and I had to recalibrate myself. I'm like, did I miss a scene? Did I fall asleep?
Am I stupid or something?
Yeah, exactly. That was the moment where I let my focus go, and not necessarily in a bad way, but where I was like, I'm going to go with this movie's own internal logic. This is happening, and I'm going to treat it as such because it's important to the characters, and the reasonings aren't as important. This happens with a lot of like these surrealist movies, as I mentioned, the works of Genet or of Gilliam. Things are dreamlike. Things are surreal. Characters don't act in traditionally understandable ways, and I do feel like you have to give yourself over if you watch something like Brazil or Jabberwocky or Delicatessen. Like it's about fucking strange people whose minds do not work
in stranger circumstances.
Exactly, yeah, and that is so. I was like, look, I don't understand this. As someone who is as ostensibly lore brained as I am, I like to be able to point on a timeline. This is why this happened, and then X, Y, and Z. It was a little bit frustrating to me to realize the surreality of the movie, because for the first half of the movie, and I think Timo, maybe this is where you felt the movie was more focused. It is a little more linear. It is a little bit more focused on the war aspects of it, and you're like, okay, fascists are bad, and that's the conflict of it with our two criminal characters. But about halfway through the movie, it leans more into the surreality. You get the element of the underground and then being trapped down there, and you have to again recalibrate your mind to that. And the time skips. That's another thing. Is the reason we're confused is because there's a time skip, and we just aren't really explained what exactly happened during that time skip. And I think it works for the themes that the movie is going for. It works to get us a variety of circumstances and show the characters growing over a long period of time, physically aging. Of course, Blackie's son growing up and seeing how that impacts him. I like the time skips from that angle, but there is the drawback of, I mean, of course, I'll have to, if I watch this movie again, I'd probably understand it a little bit better. I'm sure there is some setups and payoffs for things that I was not as attuned to on my first viewing, but it was confusing at times. And I had to just sort of throw my hands up and be like, okay, this is what we're on to next.
So are you guys talking about the precise character motivations and things like that? Is that where the disconnect is coming in for you guys? Because I feel like
I think for me that's kind of at least where my confusion. I mean, when just my viewing experience of this part where we're then the first couple minutes of being in the 60s. It felt to me at first I thought it was kind of a flashback, or because we had kind of our mise en scène, everything has really transformed when we're in 60s when we're in the underground. And so I was just kind of what's going on? And then now, and eventually, I figured it out, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, he's lying, he's duplicitous. But yeah, I don't get that duplicitousness, and I don't get that lying from the character earlier in the film.
I think it's always in Marco's character, though.
It is. He has this kind of pragmatism to him when the boat, a catastrophe, when everything's going bad on the boat, right? Marco's the guy to get the boat turned on and get the boat driving away, which is
well, even before that, he is open to Natalia getting with him a little bit.
Yeah, there is this love triangle, but then Natalia has one of my favorite lines in the movie in which he says, between the two of you, there's one good man here.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a good moment.
Because I think it's there from one of the opening lines of the movie, wherein Marco brags to Blackie's actual wife, his wife at the beginning of the film, that he got him to join the Communist Party.
Yeah,
and that is expressly how it is framed. It's we got him to join the party, which for putting that in the narrative of 1944 is we got him to join the resistance, all that stuff. But you look at it in retrospect, and he's like, oh yeah, I mean, Marco is really in this for making money out of this venture. He is there to be a black market trade guy.
Yeah.
And we evolved the 60s, and who is he? He's a party man. He's the Vanguard Party.
Apparatchik, however you say it. I can read it, but I can't say it.
The Vanguard Party shout is a great thing, Timo, because I think it is precisely that Marco sees Blackie
Leave it to me to bring a little traditional ML theory into the quest.
Shout out, baby. He does see Blackie as a force of nature, a force of an unlimited pool of rebellious energy that he can harness and fold into
but at the
his
same
black
time,
market trading in the 40s, or being a figure for the people underground in the 60s, and then he obviously he gets off the chain, and then he goes loose into the world, and what does he revert back to? Just being embroiled in a warlike scenario.
Yeah, and then so the reason that Marco, and then in the end part of the film, is wanted by Interpol is because of his like slave ring of weapons builders. They find he blows the place up, and then they're like, okay, this guy's doing some nasty bad stuff. I do think that the part of this film is concerned with talking about discussing how the nasty stuff that you got to do in revolution and in partisan activity like this. It's
it's very tuned into that stuff. Obviously, by the 90s Yugoslavia, they were deeply embroiled in civil wars and in battles for independence and nationalism and things of that nature.
Probably during the production of this movie, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
When did the Balkan Wars?
It was throughout the early 90s.
They ended in the mid. I'm googling this. I gotta know.
Go ahead, Google it up. Yeah. But that is something that is actively happening by the time this film is being produced and released.
There is still conflict after the movie came out.
Yeah.
In the region.
91, 10 years, 91 to 01.
Sure. Yeah. And there's the last hour of the film, how much of the film is set in 1992 or whatever?
A good chunk of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's as much of the movie because it's 3 acts, but that first act is
long,
half the movie.
Yeah.
Which I think is interesting. It's a very interestingly balanced movie because, as I mentioned, I'm really enjoying the movie for that first half, but I agree with Abram in that I think the second half of the movie and those last 2 acts are much more compelling to me because, again, that's the moment where it leans into the surreality of just weird shit happening, and you get a chimp operating a tank, and you get him setting off a grenade in the box, and you get these him popping out into the movie set and shooting a guy and raising his child to be a warrior that is
but his child
never seen the world before.
He doesn't know what a deer is, and he doesn't know what else
the sun is. The moon. He doesn't know what the moon is.
Right. Yeah. Well,
yeah, the education system in this underground chamber is quite poor.
Could be better.
It could be better.
Yeah. And also my favorite sequences in the movie is when we're first introduced to the established underground community, and you get to see the ways in which they operate.
Yes.
You've got a guy riding a 2-story bicycle that's operating electricity, and you've got the guy in the shitter that has the perfect thing cut out for his face.
Yes.
And people showering on bunk beds that are empty. I'm like, this is remarkable stuff.
Yeah, the guy on the bike is powering the shower, right?
And he's struggling too. He's really not having a good time.
When I say so, I watched this movie on Monday. We're currently recording this on a Friday. And when I saw this, I sent a message basically saying that this shit is awesome. And I was watching that segment specifically of the Rube Goldberg machines and the society that has grown over 20 years underground. And I specifically thought, I think Tucker's gonna love this stuff, which is why I said when we recorded our reviews this morning, I'm like, Tucker, you got to watch Underground. You're gonna love it. I think.
Isn't it kind of interesting how in the scene where Blackie's wife, his real wife, gives birth, the inception for all that is shown when they pick up the light.
Yeah, Ivan gets on the bike,
and they put the guns into the spokes and lift him up in the air too. Strange.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's it
plants fucking crazy.
Yeah, the movie is great. It plants these seeds, and then they grow into a magical beanstalk, just completely blowing your expectations out of the water for everything that precisely goes down. And then, I mean, the gizmo that Marco has set up, where he has the little crank air raid siren, and he puts on the speech.
I mean, he's doing my job. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. He's doing some Foley work.
Yeah.
He's running the radio station
for a noble and beneficial cause.
I do just want to throw out there that, and I skirted past it initially, but the core metaphor of the underground colony being a microcosm for the country of Yugoslavia under authoritarian rule.
What the Germans say to Ivan at the end of the film. Oh, he lived in a cellar. Oh, well, wasn't Yugoslavia all of a cellar?
I wrote that line down. Communism was a cellar for the world, or something like that. It has this nuanced perspective that's like, obviously fascism was bad and the Nazis were bad and we should kill them, fascist motherfuckers. But then it's like, the authoritarian Soviet governments that ruled these countries stifled the people and basically kept them in a controlled environment where time ran differently and everything like that. Use them for labor to build up the war machine and everything like that. I guess it's the same everywhere, ain't it? But no, I think that core metaphor there is so strong.
Well, here's what's interesting in my reading, and this is not like a meta win, but the film is nowhere near beloved for its political messaging at the time or in modern day. The film caused so much controversy at release that the director voluntarily put himself into retirement because of the storm it had caused. Now he quickly came out of his voluntary retirement.
In that people they did not like how Yugoslavia was portrayed, or the idea that the Yugoslav nation's communists were a cellar backwards kind of.
I saw one aspect of it that they thought it was making light of the ongoing issues in Yugoslavia. I saw criticisms that it's a comedy basically, and there's no mention or inclusion of the ethnic cleansing that is going on currently or had happened previously. So that was a criticism of the time. Abram, I don't know if you saw any more.
There's a lot of things. Slavoj Žižek has a lot to say about this movie.
Žižek has a lot to say. That's funny.
Movie.
He does not like this movie. There's a lot, and I was reading. It got a little too deep into theory, so I had to stop.
Sure.
I was trying to eat my size before we started recording.
Yeah,
but there's a lot of discourse around this film. Sorry, discourse makes it sound like people on Twitter are saying this. I'm saying that people of real repute said this 10 years ago.
Yeah.
There's a lot of discussion about the film having somewhat of an apolitical view in that it's a perspective on the nationalism underpinning Yugoslavia, underpinning the myriad states that came out of the dissolving of Yugoslavia. Is unclear the stance it takes there. It has something of a westernized interest in simply showing this sort of circus of tragedy that's unfolding. But then basically the criticism
I would put it saying that it also glorifies Tito as this victor of World War II for Yugoslavia, and it does all these imagery of, at least just your surface level interpretation, not thinking about what this metaphor is talking about. But it is just kind of rah, rah, nationalism, Tito. Oh, we love Tito.
Basically any...
We love Tito, don't we love Tito, folks?
We love Tito, folks.
He makes a great vodka, I must
admit. He does. That he does.
Basically, any political position you can take has been taken in opposition to the underground in the last 30 years of critical thought on the film, which is interesting.
Yeah.
And I think it points to the fact that this, in all of its excess, is also just a really busy movie.
It is really busy.
My answer to you earlier, Tanner, of what didn't I get? What I didn't get was the premise, and for me it's as simple as I truly thought Blackie was dead.
Oh,
yeah. Blown up by a grenade. I think
fair
that
point.
Wait, so you thought it was all you thought it was hell, or
No, because there's also, Timo, you pointed out something that is such an apt point. When we cut to the Act 2 in the 60s, the color grading of the overworld versus the underground are so radically different. I thought we were in a flashback.
I thought we were in a flashback too.
You motherfuckers would have been tricked. You would have been tricked by Marco. You'd have been living underground.
I would have been living under. Oh, I would have been making the rifles.
You would have been making M1s.
And the team could not be happier.
this isn't even me criticizing the film necessarily. I just simply think it's stuffed with so many stylistic but also ideological moves and ideas that it's the sort of movie I feel like I got to watch like 10 more times.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it makes a bold impression, but I'm as captivated by the extremely high praise that the film has gotten in retrospect, but also the real like panning of its ideological framework. I think both are interesting readings that just come from this like beautiful mess, and I mean that in like the positive Mission Impossible 8 review sense of mess.
Very timely at the time of this recording.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about that is what I thought at the end of it is there was a couple of lines as the movie was wrapping up. The last sort of intertitle thing of the movie is like, and this story will go on forever. It does not have an end. And then this other moment when honestly, I can't remember exactly what was said, but like these last few sequences when most of our characters die and all of a sudden they start saying some lines that I think read a little bit more thematic than most of the movie, frankly. Yes. And then I was like, okay, so I've heard these characters say these things about the futility of war, and I think that's where the element of it's when we're looking at Ivan. He's been like a sanitarium or something. It's like, oh, well, he's been kept underground for all this time. Isn't that really what war was like? There's things like, okay, so that's really what the movie's about thematically. But it was difficult to parse that as I was watching the majority of the film. And what I think is interesting is that I do ultimately think our distance from the political conflict of the time, our distance from and our lessened familiarity with the culture of World War II and the Cold War. You were not alive during those times. Abram, really the only one, maybe Timo more tangentially, the one familiar with the history of Yugoslavia, something I know ostensibly nothing about. I also, because of that, didn't know what elements of it were based on real life or not. I couldn't tell what was fabricated for. I mean, I assumed that there were these people underground, but that's also technically possible. Like all this stuff is to say that me watching this ostensibly as the way I would watch a Terry Gilliam movie made me enjoy it a lot more because I was not thinking of it in a direct political satire sense of these are things that actually happened. I am familiar with them happening, and here is why there's a spin on it. I was watching it like I watched the City of Lost Children or like the Adventures of Baron Munchausen, like fantastical things that are lightly tied to things that happened. So it's interesting to hear that people more familiar with the politics and, of course, who were there in the time, viewed this in a more politically confusing way. But I do think that as a general, viewing it as a general satire, as a fantasy version of war and a fantasy version of what the Cold War and World War II were like, I think it works exceptionally well because I'm viewing it more as a commentary on war as a general concept and the people that go into and the decisions that go into making taking advantage of other people and the cycle of war being something that's caused by individuals that then fractals out to other people. These are things I was viewing in a more general sense, which I think certainly helped me to appreciate the movie on like its own terms rather than trying to, which of course you would have during the time, draw direct comparisons to direct political commentary, which of course I'm just not able to do.
I found myself thinking a little bit about the Banshees of Inisherin while watching as well.
Okay, dope.
Because
sure, the two friends, yeah.
well, because the Banshees of Inisherin is such a very like culturally particular, historically particular film, but
it feels fake.
But yes, but also it also works as an abstraction very well. And I think, Tucker, what you're describing is true, but part of where I still kind of feel like the jury on this movie for me is out a little bit is that I think that the film is not, it doesn't want to be viewed as an abstraction. I think it's extremely particular. In the even I think a lot about the. Go ahead, Timo.
I agree because it's particularly about Yugoslavia. It's about this time period that it takes place in, the building of the nation. I think the building of the myth of the nation, which is what the stuff about the filmmaker and the literary elements in the middle of it are about, and then the death of the nation at the end.
Yes, I
found
it literally splits off and floats out into the sea.
It breaks away. And, I think that little bit is not. That is like the ghost of Yugoslavia.
Sure. Yes. I mean,
going and being free.
Heaven,
and,
literally. Yeah.
Oh yeah. All the characters are dead at that point. Well, where was I going? There's a visual callback here. So when the Nazis invade and they bomb, and then the soldiers come marching in, we have this kind of intertitle card montage sequence that shows all the different cities that they go through. Mm-hmm. And it's like the exact same when Tito dies and the train and the coffin and the procession goes through. All the differences is the same style. It's, it's the same title card set the whole movie, but it's like the same exact. It even feels like it's the same order. And so I'm naturally at that point, I'm like, parallels here. These are really similar. It's like the coming of the Nazis was the inspiration and the long sought or the culmination of lots of different forces building into creating this revolution that makes the nation. And then the train carrying Tito's body through the country is it's the pallbearers of the death of the nation. Mm-hmm. So, and then in the middle we have the complete fabrication, the utter making shit up of what really happened. We have the character.
We're still going source. Trust me, bro.
Yeah. So it's in my memoir, and my memoir is nonfiction. Yeah. And the things were shown of the movie production. It's just like, that just didn't happen. We saw it earlier in the movie. It just didn't happen like that at all. So that's,
I like that fabrication though. That
it felt very real. I don't think we would be like that. That they made themselves look like they're complicated, multifaceted people. No, they're freaking heroes. They're war heroes. They shot and hauled the boat with their bare hands.
Commentary on the use of filmmaking to be propaganda, and when I'm in a very Babylon sort of sense, since we evoked it at the beginning of this episode, very much a fan of movies metatextually being about movie making and the flawed people and the flawed sort of
wouldn't you just
justifications behind
to work
filmmaking
for this director?
Yes, well, when Blackie comes out and he's like, there he is, that's the evil, abusive general. How could he talk to his men like this? And it's Kusturica having fun with shitty directors, commanding their troops around, demanding them to act more naturally. And when someone dies for real on set, he's like, perfect, that's exactly what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Naturalism, finally. Yeah, good stuff.
It's funny.
Good stuff.
It's funny.
Good funny stuff. Hey, this movie is very funny. I will underline that again.
Let's underline it by.
Yeah. Did you guys find it funny? I assume.
Yes.
Yeah.
I found it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I like laugh out loud funny.
Absolutely.
At many points. And particularly it's because our core two actors are. They are made of ham. They are pure ham. They've got every bit of ham.
What is it? How does the meme go? Bam, that's a 4-inch cube of processed ham made from the congealed remains of 4 separate hogs, squeezed and emulsified and reconstituted into a single block of unholy man-made meat.
Yes.
But I think that the two main actors whose names Tanner probably has pulled up on his screen.
I do. Miki Manjolovic plays Marco, and Lazar Ristovsky plays Blackie.
Yeah. And it's their performances that make this work. From that first scene when they're acting drunk and they're patting each other on the back and they're this movie does set, even though I think it takes a while to get to this reality that really grabbed me on a deeper level. The opening sequence
the comedic
of these
tone
guys
is there immediately.
It's there immediately through the performances, but also the filmmaking. I really love
the music,
the comedic insert shots, and the big band wacky music that's that springs on like Looney Tunes cartoons we were mentioning. But you get these shots of the guy hanging upside down and yelling shit and all this stuff. I'm like, there's an energy to this right from the get go that is immediately unique, and it's because of the performances of our two main guys who honestly don't change across the course of the movie. These are not characters you're supposed to watch a compelling character arc of.
Or have
They
them
are
like learn some
catalysts for
lesson or
conflict.
something.
Yes, they are.
No,
they
they
are
don't.
markedly stagnant. They do not change, even though the times are changing. But also, how much are the times changing? Ultimately, you know.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And that's even more true for the supporting cast.
Yeah.
The supporting cast, who are very much like everyone's comedic relief.
Yes, there is
like,
no serious person here, really.
Ivan and his animals is definitely comedic relief. Natalia's comedic relief. Her brother with the 4-foot thick glasses that make his eyes look like bugs.
What do they call those soda pop glasses or something like that? I don't know.
Not soda pop, but I think it's bottle, some bottle.
It's bottle, something like that. Anyway, sorry.
Do y'all have thoughts about Natalia's character? I mean, she's kind of important to this, at least to our relationship between our two main characters as part of this love
I didn't
triangle.
pick up on that. You guys must have watched a different cut.
She I kind of struggle with her character because I think she's very she doesn't have a lot of agency, and by the time we get to the second half of the film, she's really kind of there to be a drunk and a nuisance and the object of affection for the two guys. And so I'm left a little unsatisfied with her, especially when in the beginning of the movie there was a really the idea of her brother being disabled and her wanting to be with the Nazi, and that obviously not going to work out, is something that I thought, we could build and could get a little bit deeper into this character with, like, what's her, internal struggle with, like, wanting to be with this Nazi guy for her, probably, her own benefits. It's obvious why you'd want to be like...
It's survival reasons, pretty clearly.
But it's
in the
not
narrative, it's to get the medicine for her brother.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right. I forgot about that. Yeah, she's doing it for him because the black marketeers can't. And then that point is kind of dropped. I assume the brother dies.
I mean, they say that that he gets shipped off, right?
Do they?
No, he was going to get shipped off to Austria.
Yes,
yeah, he was going to get shipped off to Austria.
The Nazi captain was like, "Oh yeah, we have a hospital for him in Austria." Yeah.
Sure, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
We believe you.
Yeah. But no, I mean, Natalia, she is a conscience that begins to bloom at certain points throughout the narrative and then is quickly stifled and drowned in alcohol to continue on and spur on the plans of the men around her, namely Marco, of course, who uses her as a chip or like a piece in his
tool to control black.
Exactly. He's like, whoa, look, we just rescued her from the Nazis or whatever. Here she is, and
they beat her up. Yeah,
exactly. But she has this internal struggle around the middle of this movie where she is like, listen, I don't feel great about having slave labor running under our feet. And Marco's like, don't worry about it. Look at all this nice stuff we got. Don't you like that? And she's like, and she goes along with it. To your point, Timo, she sort of just goes with the flow and goes with Marco's plan here, but like is drowning her sorrows in alcohol for that entire wedding sequence. She is just an absolute wreck, and leading up to that as well. And then she considers like going with Blackie, and then she goes back with Marco when they commit suicide by blowing up the whole factory or whatever. And then at the end, she is still with Marco. She is mourning him and everything like that. And she is drawn to both of these men. And as you pointed out, the great line of, between the two of you, there is one great man. Because they both have these qualities that would make a good guy, but also have qualities that make them bad guys unto themselves.
Really, how different is that from all of us?
God, that's so true. That's so goddamn true.
Inside of you, there are two guys.
Mm-hmm. I don't know.
They both love shooting guns.
That's right.
They both love shooting guns.
What else did you guys make of Natalia? If we're talking about her,
the thing that makes her so compelling, but also so confusing and hard to pin down, is that she is very much adaptable to whoever is gonna give her what she wants, or like whatever gives her the best fighting chance. And so she just she just like changes on the drop of a hat. Like every time there's like someone's doing something and then she is able to swap to someone else who seems to be having the upper hand in whatever situation, she's like, all right, she just does it. And I think it is an interesting character note of survival during a wartime. Of course, there are people who sacrifice their own morals ostensibly to do whatever will have them have the best survival or have the best thing for their family or for themselves. And so there that is like a thematic note ostensibly, but I think it also it kind of makes her annoying, which I think is like the point of like every character in this movie, is that they're all annoying in their own ways. But whenever something happens and she just immediately swaps to like the next person, and like especially when it's on the romantic side, it feels unbelievable. Like and maybe that's intentional. Of like, I don't really know if I believe that she does truly love either of these men, especially not in that first half. Maybe by the time that she spent whatever 50, 60 years with Marco, okay, maybe that relationship's a little bit deeper by that point. But she feels very fly by the seat of her pants, and it can make her it does make her feel like a character without morals at the end of the day.
Wow. Who amongst that character does have a strong... Well, I guess Blackie does have a moral compass. It's just the compass that leads him towards rebellious violence.
Yeah.
I mean, it sort of leads to an open question I saw in a lot of discussion on the film, which is there a character or characters in the narrative that you're even supposed to empathize with? What do you guys think about that?
Vera, the wife. The original wife.
Sure, yeah. I mean, she dies fairly early on, but that has this return in the heaven sequence at the end, the afterlife sequence at the end.
Then Vera and Natalia have to look at each other, and they're not happy. They're not too happy about having to be in the same table.
Yeah, well,
they called each other choice words when they were living.
But I think it just goes back to the nuance of the film that we've been circling the whole time. Is that like, no, I don't think necessarily there's a character that you're supposed to wholeheartedly like, but it certainly is entertaining to see these caricatures running around and basically serving as
so entertaining. Entertaining.
Metaphorical pieces in Kurtzika's political chess match that he's playing with himself, with the wills of the Communist Party and the wills of the rebellious spirit of Yugoslavia. And, can that ever be fully snuffed out or anything like that? I think that spirit lives in all of our characters, or those spirits live within all of our characters to varying degrees, and should be reiterated that not only, yes, are our two leading men very good in this movie, but Mirjana Jokovic is also fantastic in this movie.
Yeah, she's really good.
I mean, she has to like be along with all of the gags, just like these guys do. The physical comedy of everything from the word go. I mean, when Blackie shows up and he's like, all right, my grand plan to break her out of being in love with this Nazi captain. I'm gonna walk out on stage. I'm gonna have the co-star on stage wrap her to me with this rope, and then I'm just gonna shoot the Nazi captain and walk out of there. And she is like
this. I just love this scene. It's so funny.
She is like kicking and screaming, and then she's still tied to his back, and they're doing like a bit where she's trying to spin around and make eye contact with Marco the whole time. Like she's totally great at that. She is fantastic. And if I can continue to filibuster here about her, I think that.
You mean review the movie?
Yes, correct. But I meant to continue to ramble on about this. But like the sequence when she and Marco are having this like sexually charged fight, where they are both just pissed drunk and they are like whipping each other around onto tables and like crawling all over each other and going down on each other and like rising back up and hanging onto the chandelier and everything like that. First of all, it's an expertly, beautifully staged and directed sequence. But like they both have an animalistic like lust and passion to them that is like so charged, and your eyes are locked onto it. I think it's one of the stronger sequences in the film that is not funny and is not like politically motivated necessarily, not in like the geopolitical sense that we're talking about. It is just a genuinely impassioned moment of character work and filmmaking.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of sequences that are just incredible, just from a craft perspective. I really like. It's just it's simple, but in that same scene in the theater, there's this great visual gag where Natalia and the other guy she's playing opposite against lean into each other and away from each other with their dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
And
on the stage, yeah.
we swing the camera around, and the whole crowd is synchronized, swinging their heads back and forth to watch the exchange.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that there these little moments are illustrative of how strong the directorial hand is in a broad sense, because nailing those small things is the foundation you need to like blow up Marco's palatial villa and watch this beautifully orchestrated chaos as the underground falls in on itself. I mean, I was watching like, how the hell did they orchestrate
How did
this?
they
It's
do
beautiful.
that? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, the direction is really evident, I think, in all areas of this film. Our set design, our costumes, the choice of film stock, the way that we shoot, the way that it's colored, I guess color timed if you're using film. I think there's a really strong vision to this one, and it might be to be a little confusing and to be a little apolitical, but just, oh my god, my chair just broke in the middle of it all. We good. Yeah, I think the direction on this one really, really stands out. And I'm just going to shout it out again that I think the music in this movie is like perfect. It's just like so good. And every time the main song comes back, I'm like, yeah, here we go. Looney Tunes is starting. Like, let's fucking go.
Yeah. I mean, another moment of just cinematography and direction I want to shout out is when Blackie and his son Yavin, is that how they say it? It's something like that.
Yovan, I think.
Yovan. Yeah. When they escape and they're doing the whole thing of like, he thinks the moon is the sun and he thinks the deer is a cow or a horse. He's like, that's how you drew horses down in the underground. And he's like, I'll teach you about it later. And then he has to teach his son to swim because his son doesn't know how to swim. And so he's trying to have this tender moment with his son. And then a military helicopter flies over. He's like, oh, fuck that noise. I gotta go shoot this helicopter. And he lets his son drown as he's like obsessed with chasing down this helicopter on foot and firing a machine gun at it. It's a beautiful shot of him like running out of the water and across the beach with the helicopter in the background. He's got his gun in hand. You get great stuff there. And also like such a tragic moment that he's like, he's lived, side by side with his son for 20 years. And they've never left each other, and now his son gets to see the real world that his father has told him so much about, and his father is so obsessed with killing these fascist motherfuckers that he lets his son drown, and then his son sees his bride like swimming down underwater, and then
who also killed herself earlier.
Yes,
by jumping down a well.
Yeah.
And then there's this interesting, again, surreal element of being underwater. Is heaven? Is the afterlife? Because then that comes back at the end when all our characters are dead, and we see just this another. How did they do it? This murky water with this really interesting like light and debris floating in it, and people are underwater playing instruments and like swimming around and dancing and all that stuff, and then I think that then transitions into the final dinner on the floating thing, like especially the end of the movie. And this is why I agree with Abram. I think it really does climax in an interesting way and like gain momentum in terms of its intrigue. For me is like just back to back these fascinating moments of imagery that I think will really stick with me. Primarily this moment when after Marco and Natalia are killed, they're in a motorized wheelchair that is going around in circles.
And it just keeps going.
And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, that is
crazy,
a striking image.
Yeah.
And this movie is filled with them.
Well, and it's not just that, it's that then Blackie's in the middle of the arc of the circle that is driving around, and he's like pounding his head against this cross
the upside down crucifix and everything like that. I mean, it is almost a like to a comedic degree unto itself, like a staged sequence. So it was like, God, the amount of imagery that is packed into the single frame of like the tragic Blackie seeing his friends, running around him in a motorized wheelchair on fire in their love, with the upside down crucifix and the battle of
he having
horrors of war
ordered them killed. You know, he was like,
yeah,
kill those profiteers. They're not part of us.
Yeah, I mean, I like that last exchange too, when like the UN is there and everything, and he's calling them fascist motherfuckers too, and he's talking with the UN guy, and he's like, "Oh, we did it, comrade," and they have their little exchange of, "I'm no comrade, sir." And he's like, "Well, I'm no sir, comrade." It's a little tit for tat exchange that is also like politically charged, and Blackie doesn't view himself as a man to be respected. He views himself as a soldier, a soldier for the state. What state is that? We don't really know. It's been long dissolved at this point.
But he says that he's like, what army are you from? He's like, I'm the army of myself.
Oh, sure.
And that is, again, another one of those, as movie is wrapping up, lines where I'm like, that's what the movie's really about. It has this like series of.
Doesn't he also say that my country is my superior?
But then it's like, what country are you from?
Oh, sure.
Country
Sure.
He has his own. He's got his own goals very clearly.
Yeah. He's a secessionist at the end of the day. He wants to make the United State of Blackie.
Serbian, I guess. It's in Belgrade.
Oh, sure.
Glorious, great Serbia.
Let's see here.
Of course.
I mean,
that's what I've been saying.
Yeah. I wrote down just lines that I found funny, if I can shout those out. When they see, I love that it's the same actors playing the actors in the movie.
God,
it's so funny when they see Hans, what's his name, the Nazi captain, Franz. I went for the other typical German name. When they see Franz, and he's like, hasn't changed in 15 years. That's Germans for you, huh?
The Nazi vampire, they call him, right?
Yeah, yes. Let's see here. What else do I have? I don't know. Do you guys have any like things that you think is like the funniest line or thing in the movie?
Yeah, for me, it's Jovin's insane, unchanging expression. He's like,
oh, sure. He's just so tense and furrowed.
Yeah, I think that's so funny because it keeps coming back to him, and no matter what they're doing, it doesn't change. That's my favorite joke.
He's like, when they're like about to assault the film set, and there's like the doves in the bush, and he's like, he's like freaking out because of them. Yeah, that's pretty funny.
I also love, again, on the character dynamic of Blackie and Jovin, I love how lovingly paternal Blackie is.
Yeah,
He's always kissing him on the head. There's this moment where he throws a grenade and he gives him a little peck on the head. And then he's like calling him my sunshine and like my dear as like they're doing all this stuff. And I'm like, again, wacky, surreal, insane movie where, again, a chimpanzee hops in a tank.
Yes.
And like all this stuff is like, and Tanner, look, I actually, hold on. Let's pull up.
Here we go.
How many movies have Tanner Dykstra and I seen together?
Okay, here we go.
I keep track of this on Letterboxd. I have a tag.
Yes.
I just want to give you a shout out for knowing my taste.
Oh, sure.
You and I have seen 821 movies together.
After that, I think it picked on it a little bit. Yeah.
And one thing that hasn't had a chance to come up so often on this show on Quest, even though we've been doing this for so long, but is I really do love a movie that can have a sense of whimsy and wackiness to it, but still deliver meaningful thematics and meaningful messages. This movie's a little bit lighter on character moments than I would have liked out of like some of my favorite movies that I think do this really well. I like Everything Ever All at Once, another movie we got a chance to talk about that I think handles its characters and writing of its characters in a more meaningful way. But I love being able to talk about a movie super deeply, but then also say a chimpanzee got in a tank and blew up a wall, and there's a wormhole underground railroad of these cars that are driving from Bosnia to Italy with thousands of people on them and all this stuff. Like, that is my favorite thing about filmmaking, is when the wacky can be infused with the meaningful and the thematic. And so, Tanner, you locked eyes with me across state lines.
Yes, of course.
And you saw into my soul.
That's right. Couple other things I want to shout out. Love the continual move that Marco has, where if he wants Natalia to stop drinking, just smashes the bottle over his head. Great stuff.
Or drinks it himself. He'll just like she turns her head and he'll like.
Yeah, but there's a segment of like.
Yeah, but again, Looney Tunes.
Yeah, it's Looney Tunes. Like
the bottle that you break over someone's head, that is a cartoon thing.
I also want to, just because Tucker uses the word wormhole, like underground highway thing, not something that we talked about a whole lot, but I was also like, is it like a fantastical thing, or is it just us as Americans being like highway pilled and be like, no, you can like drive from like Bosnia to Italy in relatively short order?
Yeah, but they walk.
Oh, don't they? Oh, no. Wait, who walks?
Ivan and the guy that works for the sanitarium. They walk.
Are they in Italy at the beginning?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I
No. They're not in Italy.
They're in Berlin.
They do meet a bus that's going to Italy. Remember?
Okay.
Like try to hand him cash and stuff. But it is very clear that because also you see Ivan like wandering around this underground area. Which again maybe that implies that there's like other underground camps of people.
I don't know.
And I think about this too hard. But he's wandering around and he's like looking up the walls, and every time there's like different signs that point to different ass countries.
Yes.
And I'm like, that's not how space works.
Oh man, I think that about does it for me. The last thing I want to mention, two more things, two more funny moments, and then we can score it up here. When he's doing
funny moments compilation,
when he's doing the Natalia heist, when he's heisting Natalia, and everyone's just like along for the ride watching this unfold on stage, and then when Blackie says, "And you act for Germans," that's when Franz is like, "Hey, all right, let's go."
Oh yeah, and he gets
like, up.
Whoa. just total, yeah. Like indignation and offense at that.
Yeah.
Is so,
he's totally fine with everything else, with seeing his wife like tied to a strange man on stage, but as soon as the Germans are insulted, he's like, "Okay, that's enough, everybody.
Now I can kill you."
Now I can kill you. And then last thing is just a physical comedy moment when all the animals have escaped and there's utter chaos of the bombing raid at the very beginning of the movie, and I believe it's Marco just grabs a cat and like shines his shoes.
He like buffs his shoes with the cat.
Yeah.
or the elephant steals his shoes.
Yes, an elephant.
Like, hey, you fat horse.
Yeah.
Oh, and then of course, like the beginning of the movie is him like jacking off while there's bombs going off and things like that because he's Oh,
and that was one of the moments where I'm like, Jean-Pierre Jeunet must love this.
Oh yeah, I mean you can definitely feel the like, connections there. Yes.
Yeah. God. Oh my goodness.
All right.
Well, Palm Details and a score? How about?
Yes, Palm Details for the 19.
I should start buffing my shoes.
Cannes Film Festival. Excuse me.
It's okay. You're new at this.
Yeah. So I've only done it a couple times. Hang on, I gotta look up who this.
Only like episode 46 of this.
Yeah.
Incarnation of the series.
I gotta look up who this person is just to be safe, but it was the only film that won the Palme d'Or this year. It was not shared. The jury president was French actress and singer Jeanne Moreau. How about that? She's of course known for the films Jules and Jim, Elevator to the Gallows, The Bride Wore. Hey, I've seen The Bride Wore Black. That's a good movie. So she's in those. She was the jury president this year. Other members of the jury include I've only put one name here, but some guy that I think would very much clearly enjoyed this movie was a little guy named John Waters was on the jury this year.
Sure.
Yeah. Other films in competition this year, of the 23 others that were up for the Palme d'Or, included Jim Jarmusch's Dead Man. That's his film that stars Johnny Depp. And then Tim Burton's Ed Wood was up for the award this year.
I love Ed Wood. I love that movie.
Yeah, that's a great movie.
That movie just makes me want to make movies because, boy, does old Ed Wood go through a lot of... If Ed Wood can make a fucking movie, I can make a fucking movie.
If he can make the worst movie ever made, you can make
I can finish a movie.
Or a worse movie?
I can complete one. Finito.
Yes.
Well, I would probably say this one's a bit better as a Palme d'Or winner than Ed Wood. I would pick this one to win. I like them both, but I would pick this one to win over Ed Wood.
We do have another Kusturica film in the hopper still to come. When Father Was Away on Business is another film he directed.
Oscar nominated, I believe.
But yes,
as well,
that's right.
That one.
Okay. Well then, let's give this a score so that we can spin the wheel and see if we get a twofer for Kusturica. Or however you say the name.
Something like that.
Unfortunately, Balkan names are of the most difficult for me to say. Okay, we've got scores. Let's see them. 3, 2, 1, boom! Okay, we've got a score. It's pretty far up there. The score is 8.9. We have no ties with 8.9. Point breakdown is that I gave it a 7.9, Abram gave it an 8.1, Tanner gave it a 9.7, and Tucker gave it a 9.8. So 8.9 is the average of all those numbers, in case you were keeping track, and that's going to rocket this up into the top 10. It's going to go at spot number 8, and it's going to go right around some other war movies, in fact. It's going to go below The Pianist, Adrian Brody's movie, and then it's going to go above Apocalypse Now, Martin Sheen's movie. So...
Martin Sheen's movie. Famously the auteur of Apocalypse Now, Martin Sheen.
Martin Sheen.
And famously the auteur of The Pianist,
Adrian.
Well, at least we prefer to attribute it to him than the real director of the film, but well, I suppose the same could be said of Francis Ford Coppola. Anyway.
Apples to Apples is working on those to pair. Well, okay. Let's spin the wheel, how about?
Oh, sure. Let's do that.
Yeah.
Let's spin the wheel. Let me get it pulled up here. Take 2 minutes to have that happen.
Okay, I gotta do my vocal warm-ups. Me.
Okay,
Can I get like a big band backing track?
Yes. Where is that? Where? Okay. Well, yes. You may.
Okay, sounds good. Wheel, what's your deal? Give us a movie that makes us squeal. Is it on digital or is it on reel? Wheel, what's your deal?
It makes me want to crone it.
And Wheel's deal is number 38.
Number 68. Number 68 is going to land us still in the 90s. Still in the 90s. Oh, with another long boy here. Settle in for another long boy of a film. Period film from 1993. This is a film that stars, hey, shout out Gong Li. I recognize
2 years
the name.
prior.
Yes.
Shout out who?
Gong Li, name I recognize. I can't say that for the rest of the... Oh, actually, maybe I know this person. Anyway, it's a film that stars Gong Li, Zhang Fengyi, Leslie Cheung, from the director Chen Kage, or Kaigi, maybe? I'm sorry. It is a film called Farewell, My Concubine.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Yeah.
I think I have heard of this one. Okay.
I said that the other night.
Hey, another film that pops up in the Letterboxd Top 250, number 100.
100 on the Letterboxd Top 250. Farewell, My Concubine. Chinese Hong Kong epic historical drama.
I do want to point out, just briefly, since we're on the topic of raising and lowering the position of films, that when I watched what the fuck was the movie? Underground. It was number 160 on the Letterboxd Top 250, and then the following day, I looked at the page. It was number 159. Don't want to pat myself on the back too much.
Nice one.
I just want to shout out that in my backlog Banter Google Chrome profile, on the right-hand side of my search bar, it says recently viewed movies. Underground, Triangle of Sadness, Under the Son of Satan, All That Jazz, and Black Adam.
Wow.
Wait, what? Oh, these are the ones you've rented?
No,
these are just things I've looked up recently.
Films he's looked up recently.
Google these days just like keeps track of the movies that you watch or like, so I have this too.
Did you look up Black Adam?
Yeah. Of course I did.
Mine says that 23 days ago I looked up Sinners. So,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, wait. This is like when you look up movies, it tells you what you looked up recently.
Yeah.
I mean, Google just wants more information.
Just Google a movie, and it'll tell you all the other movies you've been Googling recently.
Recently viewed movies.
Yeah.
Her Up Tomorrow, Final Destination, Bloodlines, Creature Commandos, and Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan.
Hey, Bill,
what is that? Did that win Palme d'Or?
No, yeah.
I don't know. What year did that come out?
If it was Jason Takes Belgrade, maybe it would have won.
Oh fuck, that was good. Oh, well, what year did it come out? It might have been in competition, and maybe just couldn't get it done. 89.
Yeah,
hey.
maybe.
Oh, that's close to the one we just pulled. Yeah.
Yeah. Alrighty,
Wow.
well, to remind you, we did just pull Farewell, My Concubine, 1992. We'll be talking about that next time. Until then, please, dear viewers, write some comments so Abram doesn't have to go searching around on these non-quest videos for comments.
Review.
Yeah, come on. You can get some intellectual thoughts down about this movie. It's an assignment, yeah. So we will be us here will be watching for that, and you will be watching for us when we come back to talk about Farewell, My Concubine next time. That's about it for me here. Thanks for talking about Underground. I myself am going to now go underground, back into hiding. I don't know where I was going.
Just so the Nazi regime doesn't
just
find
so that
you
the United Nations can't find me.
Sure.
And until then, you know what I say. Stay cool, keep warm, peace.